Islam has surpassed Roman Catholicism as the world's largest religion, the Vatican newspaper said Sunday. For the first time in history, we are no longer the top. Muslims have overtaken us, Monsignor Formenti said in an interview with the Vatican newspaper. He said that Catholics accounted for 17.4% of the world's population, a stable percentage, while Muslims were at 19.2%. It is true that while Muslim families, as it is well known, continue to make lots of children, Christian ones, by this he means Roman Catholic, on the contrary, tend to have fewer and fewer, the Monsignor said.
According to a report by Faith Matters, the UK is seeing a surge in Brits converting to Islam. In the last year, around 5,200 people in Britain converted to Islam. As many as 100,000 have converted in the last decade. Now, while that's not a huge number if you consider the UK's total population, which is around 61 million, it's definitely notable. Of those converting, about 62% were women, and the average age is over 27 years old. And the vast majority of women who converted also changed their appearance, with a significant majority adopting the hijab, or a headscarf. Now, we've done stories here on the show how some European countries have voted to ban the hijab in public, to ban minarets. But that's not the case in the UK. Now, the obvious question really is, what is behind this high rate of conversion? Some followers told Britain's The Telegraph that they felt lost in their own lives, that they were lacking in purpose before conversion. And most Brits have reported that since their conversion, they've been living with ease in the UK, that they've only faced minimal problems from their families about their new choice of religion. So what's going on? What is compelling so many young white women to convert to Islam in droves? We're going to delve further into this topic on another program.
Michael Hart, the American author of the wide-selling book, The 100, a ranking of the most influential persons in history, chose Prophet Muhammad to be at the top of the list. He said,
"My choice of Muhammad to lead the list of the world's most influential persons may surprise some readers and may be questioned by others. But he was the only man in history who was supremely successful on both the religious and secular levels. It is this unparalleled combination of secular and religious influence which I feel entitles Muhammad to be considered the most influential single figure in human history."
Many international intellectuals were impressed with Prophet Muhammad's personal qualities and expressed it in their writings. Lamartine, the famous French historian, in his book The History of the Turks, said about Prophet Muhammad,
"If greatness of purpose, smallness of means, and outstanding results are the three criteria of human genius, who could dare to compare any great man in modern history with Muhammad?"
Mahatma Gandhi, the spiritual leader of the Indian independence movement and the pioneer of resistance through mass civil disobedience, said about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him,
"I became more than convinced that it was not the sword that won a place for Islam in those days in the scheme of life. It was the rigid simplicity, the utter self-effacement of the Prophet, the scrupulous regard for pledges, his intense devotion to his friends and followers, his intrepidity, his fearlessness, his absolute trust in God and in his own mission."
Wolfgang Goethe, one of the key figures of German literature and one of the most famous European poets, who was also a painter, humanist, scientist, and philosopher, said about Prophet Muhammad,
"He is a prophet and not a poet, and therefore his Quran is to be seen as a divine law and not as a book of a human being, made for education or entertainment."
أشرف الأعراب والعجم خير من يمشي على قدمه باسط المعروف جامعتان صاحب الإحسان والكرم تاج رسل الله قاطبتان صادق الأقوال والكلم خبيت بالنور طينته.
It's the world's fastest growing religion, Islam. The Chicago area alone, home to an estimated 400,000 Muslim faithful. Tonight, why some people are making the switch to a religion many Americans have trouble understanding. Mark Saxenmeyer has our special report.
This is the story of 3 Chicagoans, all raised as Christians, all who decided to ultimately reject that religion.
Internet is down.
Nadira Rodriguez Muhammad grew up Catholic, but found herself constantly questioning the long-held beliefs of her family.
I always felt that something was missing for me.
Ian Bushner is a law student at the University of Chicago.
I felt like that there wasn't a God.
Whitney Nichols is a new Loyola grad who grew up in suburban Streamwood.
I guess what I was really looking for was what felt most natural and most logical to me.
When Nadira entered high school in the mid-1990s, she became friends with a group of Muslim girls.
They just had this level of contentment and a sisterhood that was, yeah, I wanted to be a part of that.
Ian drifted towards the Muslim students at his high school as well.
I remember defending some of my friends at school from accusations, after 9/11, and then I started reading the Quran. I said, oh, here is a form of God that I've never been presented before.
After September 11, the interest actually increased.
Dr. Assad Basul is professor at Chicago's Islamic American College. He says the tragedy 6 years ago initially prompted angry questions, but eventually many of the curious found answers to their own spiritual questions through Islam and converted.
Sometimes, negative things bring positive things.
In fact, according to a first-ever random sampling of American Muslims by the Pew Research Center, 21% of the nation's 2.4 million Muslims are converts to the faith.
Eventually, I realized that I was looking to the Quran for advice, for direction, and at the point that you believe that the Quran is revelation from God, then you're a Muslim.
The conversion has meant many changes in their lives. Ian prays 5 times a day.
You'll finish a prayer and realize
According to research, in order for a culture to maintain itself for more than 25 years, there must be a fertility rate of 2.11 children per family. With anything less, the culture will decline. Historically, no culture has ever reversed a 1.9 fertility rate. A rate of 1.3, impossible to reverse, because it would take 80 to 100 years to correct itself, and there is no economic model that can sustain a culture during that time. In other words, if 2 sets of parents each have 1 child, there are half as many children as parents. If those children have 1 child, then there are 1/4 as many grandchildren as grandparents. If only 1 million babies are born in 2006, it's hard to have 2 million adults enter the workforce in 2026. As the population shrinks, so does the culture. As of 2007, the fertility rate in France was 1.8, England 1.6, Greece 1.3, Germany 1.3, Italy 1.2, Spain 1.1. Across the entire European Union of 31 countries, the fertility is a mere 1.38. Historical research tells us these numbers are impossible to reverse. In a matter of years, Europe as we know it will cease to exist. 1.8 children per family. Muslims, 8.1. In southern France, traditionally one of the most populated church regions in the world, there are now more mosques than churches. 30% of children ages 20 and younger are Islamic. In the larger cities such as Nice, Marseille, and Paris, that number has grown to 45%. By 2027, 1 in 5 Frenchmen will be Muslim. In just 39 years, France will be an Islamic republic. In the last 30 years, the Muslim population of Great Britain rose from 82,000 to 2.5 million, a 30-fold increase. There are over 1,000 mosques, many of them former churches. In the Netherlands, 50% of all newborns are Muslim, and in only 15 years, half of the population of the Netherlands will be Muslim. In Russia, there are over 23 million Muslims. That's 1 out of 5 Russians. 40% of the entire Russian army will be Islamic in just a few short years. Currently in Belgium, 25% of the population and 50% of all newborns are Muslim. The government of Belgium has stated 1/3 of all European children will be born to Muslim families by 2025, just 17 years away. The German government, the first to talk about this publicly, recently released a statement saying, "The fall in the German population can no longer be stopped. Its downward spiral is no longer reversible. It will be a Muslim state by the year 2050.
It's 1 p.m. in Mission Viejo, California, when Angela Collins answers the call to prayer. It's her second prayer of the day, and following custom, she'll pray 3 more times before the day is done.
Now I have this belief, and I love my belief, so I have to respect it and follow the rules. The rules are not easy to follow.
Angela is Muslim. She has been for almost 5 years. Raised Catholic, she learned about Islam after meeting Muslims while traveling overseas. She converted just 2 months after September 11th, a time when the war on terror was almost synonymous with a war on radical Islam.
I saw a very dark persona of Muslims in general to Americans, and I realized it was so far removed from my actual experience abroad that people had to know this is not who they are. This is not how they are.
There are an estimated 1.3 billion Muslims worldwide, and most are not Arabs. Here in the United States, while the Muslim contingent numbers an estimated 7 to 8 million, it's growing rapidly. 20,000 new converts each year, 4 times as many women as men.
In the Quran, it says that women were created independently of Adam, that Eve was an independent creation of God's. And so for a lot of white American women, that really appeals to their sensibilities of equality, and it's very liberating for them.
Maybe I'll help you cook something.
Julia Roach converted to Islam after being introduced to the religion by her husband, Chris. They weren't married at the time. He is also an American.
When I found out he was Muslim, I told him, I believe, right away, I will never become a Muslim. I will never cover my head. I will never be this person. So don't ever ask me to be that person. And he never did.
But she did have lively discussions with him about religion. She was raised a Christian and said she converted after she was able to see past the stereotypes and learned about the values of Islam.
Nama Yiznakom. Daudi. Sana'ani. Resha. Diavella Sagimim Be'ele. And Radafuli. Ildefonakom. Altik Halon. Menachma. Die Hoda Kasta. Die La. Altik Halon. Menachma. Die Hoda Kasta. Die La.